All right, welcome back to the Day Before podcast. This is season 2. We're super excited. Our first interview of season 2. I have a very established hooper, basketball player. I don't think basketball is life at this point in his life anymore, but I'm just very excited to get somebody of his caliber and his talent level to join us. I have Greg Plater with me. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. This is an honor to be able to just sit down and have a conversation and learn a little bit more about you, more than what I've just kind of read. And obviously, we met playing basketball at a much lower level than probably what you're used to, but it's something that allowed us to develop a friendship. So I think that it's been good.
Yeah, no, it's an honor to be here too, man. I think basketball has been able to provide so many different relationships for me and allow me to learn in different levels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, even if it's not a pro scene or a D1 atmosphere, whatever it is, it's still, there's so much you can learn from it, so many positives you can take. So I think like I appreciate every opportunity, when it comes to the basketball world.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start where you're from and how you got into basketball? I don't know if you're someone who had the basketball in your hand at 2 or was in the crib, or just what drew you to basketball when you started.
Yeah, so I'm kind of one of those people. I remember when I was a kid, I had a Fisher Price hoops, hoop in my house when I was like 3-4 years old.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom giving me a basketball, and we'd have like the TV on the floor with like NBA on NBC, and you'd see like Anthony Hardaway, Jordan, all those guys. And I remember like trying to dunk on the hoop and mimic those guys. So basketball's been my deal. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, but I was born in Oakland, which is where I live now, in the Bay Area. So it's really cool to have the experience knowing where you were born, where your roots are, literally. Growing up in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest was great, and then now to live here as an adult, I feel like this is where I'm kind of meant to be. It's like it's a weird turnaround.
Nice, yeah, I love it here too, and I'm kind of, I guess, in some ways following a similar path, but I grew up and was born and raised in Oakland, and now I'm up in Eugene and spending the summer in Seattle before hopefully I do come back as well. So I think it's always great to kind of get to move to and experience different people in different cities, because you can just really learn about a lot of different cultures that way, and I think it helps round you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. I take high value in learning about different people. I think as a basketball player, like one thing I've always tried to do is learn from other people's games, other players,
Absolutely.
And see the way they do things, the way they succeed, or some of the failures they've had, and then just apply that to my game and like, okay, how can I not make that same mistake, or how can I improve in this scenario or situation that they might have not succeeded in. So yeah, I think always observing and learning is like one thing I really like hold true to myself. In the court, and off the court too.
Mm-hmm. Is there a favorite player growing up?
Yeah, Jordan was always like the favorite player, but throughout my life, I've had different players who were huge influence. From like T-Mac was huge, Allen Iverson, Darren Williams, Ray Allen, Amari Stoudemire, Steve Nash. There's like certain players, Dirk, even those kinds of guys, or Pistol Pete was one of the big ones growing up, just seeing how flashy he was and how he was innovative,
Yeah.
And watching his old school basketball tapes where he'd teach skills.
Yeah.
And all those old school fundamentals like really stuck with me, and I using both hands and the behind the back pass and all that. So yeah, Larry Bird, like I really love Larry Bird. So like the guys who mixed the fundamentals with the flash were the guys who I really gravitated towards. And also I think a lot of those guys, if you think about them, there's a level of like excellence that they hold, and a lot of respect, to their character that people feel and tie to. So it wasn't just like good basketball players, but there's always the guys who were like very transcendent in the game. You think of Jordan, you think about his charisma, you think about his style, you think about his competitive nature, and all these guys have that like it factor. So I always look to see like how are these players like standing out, and just there's something special about those types of guys. So I always gravitated towards those kinds of players who just like were always just a step ahead.
Okay. So let's take it back. Guess when you're growing up in Salem, correct?
Yep.
What was the first, I guess, organized team that you played?
Oh, that's a good one. So I remember this. The first team I played for was a Boys and Girls Club team, and my coach ended up being like one of the state senators for Oregon. His name is Peter Courtney, and I remember we had like his son was on the team, and we had a really good team, and we would just blow teams out the water, and some of the parents would complain about the what's they call it, the
You run the score up.
yeah, running the score, the like competition rule, sportsmanship rule. And so we would blast teams. We like went undefeated that year, and I remember he would always be driving us to like keep going, like put your foot on the throat and just like no mercy. And I think that was like the first real experience I had where I was like, oh, it's okay to like be all out and not hold back in your competitive nature. And so that was huge for me, shaping my competitiveness. Just like, all right, you don't have to hold back.
Yeah.
Like no friends on the court essentially.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the things too when you're playing, and a lot of times when you're playing with competition that's like a lower level, you kind of ease up a little bit, and then you end up losing games that you probably shouldn't. But so from the Boys and Girls Club, was it at that point where you were like, oh, this is something that I really want to pursue, this is something that I love, and maybe you started focusing on that at that point, or did that come a little later?
I think from the Fisher-Price days, I fell in love and I kind of knew like this is what I want to do. But I remember going to the Boys and Girls Club, and my grandpa was the janitor at the YMCA. So in the summertime, I would go between both places and just spend my afternoons there. And I remember playing with the older guys, and I was like, this is from like 6 years old to like 10 years old. I was playing with adults, and they would allow me to play. I don't know why, but they let me join, and they would mentor me and like coach me up on the mistakes I was making, and little things I was arguing with. They're like, no, this is how you do it. And so that was really good for me, having guys around the community who I could look up to, who embraced me and showed me how to tap into my skills, and beat me up on the court and let me learn from a lot of failure. And I would always challenge guys to one-on-one, kids my age, older people, and just always just be like relentless with trying to improve. Like I just remember as a kid, I would spend hours and hours and hours in the gym per day, especially in the summertime, and it would never get boring to me. Some people are like, oh, okay, I did it, it's good. I would be like, okay, I did that for 4 hours. All right, I'm gonna go eat, and then can I go back out and just dribble outside, or shooting around the house, like air shooting around the house. Like it was obsessive. So that was like the beginning of like when I knew like, okay, when I was 6 to 10 years old, elementary school, playing with the kids on the playground, I would beat some of my classmates, and some of them would like be angry, and I was like relentless, just like looking at guys like I said, like Jordan, and knowing that, okay, I want to be in the NBA one day. All right, I have to like keep getting better and challenge everybody. And then I would try and look for players who were better than me, to where when I would get beat, I was like, okay, that's the person who I want to beat in the next year. I set goals for myself, like, okay, I want to be as good as this guy, and just keep climbing the totem pole essentially.
Yeah. How were your parents during that time? Like, were they really supportive of that, or did they say like if you want to play in the NBA, then you got to really go for it, and they kind of just allowed you to play as much as you needed to or wanted to at that age?
Yeah, my mom was awesome. So, like, my family was awesome. Everyone knew how much I loved basketball. And my mom was never the parent who forced me to play, like, for scholarship. Like, oh, hey, you can do this with basketball. She didn't really think of it like that. She was like, dude, you love it, and I like basketball, and it's fun. She loved supporting me and always encouraged me to try and be better than the next person, or improve myself, like never be... and always stay humble. She was like, if I was better than the kids in the game, she was like, don't think about them. Think about the other kids maybe in California. There's kids who are better than you. Like, don't ever settle. And so she instilled that in my mind, that I always had to be looking towards the next competition that I might not see, but could face one day. She's like, if you want to be in the NBA, there's going to be all these guys who are better. So this is who you should be looking towards. And like, it was, like I said, there was never a, like, okay, you're good for Salem, Oregon, which is like the smallest little area, but think about, you want to make sure that you're better than everybody. So I never was satisfied, always hungry, and I always had continuous support from my family and the community to like always improve and play with the older guys. So I was never bigger. I was a really small kid, and I was usually the smallest one for my age group. So it was a lot of times where I was like having to fight those uphill battles physically, where it was like, okay, I'm always gonna lose these games, so I gotta keep going. Then I grow, and then I face that obstacle, beat that obstacle, and the next time, you play that person, you're like, oh man, I'm better than them now. Who's the next person? So it's like I said, it was a never-ending quest, man. Just to, like, be the best.
Nice. Was there ever any thought to potentially moving to a bigger basketball city or basketball region? I don't know the Pacific Northwest scene that well, but I know now it's like a big thing to go to like these prep schools, and you're flying from wherever you live to go play at a Finley Prep or a Mount Verde Academy and things like that. So was that something that was happening when you were coming up, or was there any thought to maybe going to a bigger city ever?
Well, my mom grew up in California. She grew up in Pomona, so she knew that the level of competition was better. And at the time, my father was living in the South Bay, so Torrance area, near LA, and so she was always like saying, maybe you want to go and try and play in California, and she kind of missed it, after being in Oregon for over a decade. But I actually ended up moving to California when I was in middle school. So I moved to California in middle school and lived in, like I said, that Torrance area, Gardena area, and then really definitely figured out like, oh wow, this is a whole different pond playing with these guys. They were physical, intense, and a lot of the kids had a lot more size than I had. So it was another chance for me to see like, oh wow, the basketball world is so much bigger than what I knew. Mm-hmm. I might have been the best in my area for my age, but now let me go and test myself against these kids who are really talented, talk trash, and are going to push you. So yeah, that was really exciting for me to have that in middle school, get introduced to the Cali kids because they were at a whole different level,
Got you. And how long were you down in California?
About 3 years.
Okay. And
then I moved back to Oregon for the rest of high school, because I just missed home.
Okay. So what was high school basketball like for you? Guess what level did you play at? I know it's the level systems are, I think, backwards from California and Oregon. So I think Division 1 is our highest.
6A is the highest. Yeah. So okay. I played. It was 4A when I was playing, and then it turned into 6A. I think midway through my high school career. Our team was decent. We had like I would say a bunch of blue collar players, and then I weirdly my whole entire life I was always on the underdog team. So I was carrying a heavy load as a player, and I would have to do a lot more than most. I have to be the best scorer, make the plays for others, be guarding the best player. So I always had to do more because I wasn't around like the most talented players. A lot of those guys went to different schools, like you said. They moved to the area where the better athletes were playing, and they kind of formed a little super team in the area. But I always enjoyed being against those guys. So I kind of formed an identity as an underdog. And my high school team, I was, as a freshman, I was like, 5'9", like 130. I was a really small guy, maybe like 5'7", 130. I was like tiny. And like even my sophomore year, I was like a little rail. And then my junior year, I grew a little bit, and I got to play varsity my sophomore year, which is really cool. I actually broke my wrist my freshman year, which really like helped form my jump shot because I started shooting with my left hand only. Mm-hmm. So then like my guide hand, my right hand really formed a lot. So helped my jump shot weirdly to break my wrist and be in that cast for like 6 months.
Would you recommend that for young players?
Yeah, just break a wrist. The jump shot would be good. It's a weird situation. But then my junior year had a breakout season. But then I remember in the preseason, I want to say I don't know if it was my junior year or senior year, but we played a team from Seattle or from Washington, and the point guard just like destroyed me. I mean, he I think he was a D1 guy. I thought I was like pretty good at the time, but then when I played against him, I realized again, like holy smokes, there is so many talented players out there, that are in other states and cities. You have to get better, and so that fueled me. That whole entire year was just like, okay, now I have another person that I can think about, and like I got introduced to AAU, very late. I didn't play until my junior year, going into my junior year of high school, which is pretty late for most kids. Obviously nowadays they have like first graders playing AAU, right? Or elementary age kids playing AAU. So yeah, I didn't play until I was 15. So that was harder for me to get recruited. So yeah, just taking the identity as the underdog and wasn't highly recruited. I was not recruited for D1 scholarship until after my senior year. So some of the accolades I had were, first team All State in the state of Oregon. I graduated the same year as Kevin Love and Kyle Singler, and I got a whole laundry list of names of talented players from Oregon and Washington those 2007, 2006, 2008 years. And so, not having a scholarship after doing so well, my team had made it to the state tournament after 13 years of not making it, and we won the league, and we were, like I said, just so many times where you're not supposed to do it, and we made it. And I didn't get a scholarship to University of Oregon. Oregon State didn't really recruit me. They offered me to walk on, which is a kind of slap in the face to a guy who's top 5 player in the state with Kevin Love and Kyle Singler. You know what I mean? All the top 15 players, I'd say 9 or 10, maybe more, had D1 scholarships from Duke, UCLA, Texas, Oregon, Vanderbilt. You got Brad Tinsley, those guys. And the guys who are still playing pro. Now for me to be the only guy who didn't have a scholarship amongst that group was a huge fire under my belt, under my belly. It's just all right, another obstacle. So my whole career, man, I've always been underrated and had to prove myself. So then I went to play AAU after my senior year, which is entirely. It's so crazy, man, to think most of your buddies are signed to D1 schools, and then after you're playing AAU in April, and now all that pressure is to get a scholarship. So my AAU coach, Charles Terrell, who's working with KD for Nike, he's his closest relationship at Nike. He called me in the summertime and was like, "Hey man, we have this tournament in Vegas." He's like, "I know you got prom coming up, but this tournament's super big. I think it was Kingwood Classic or something." He was like, "There's gonna be all these schools there. You should miss this prom, to try and get a scholarship, because that could pay for your schooling. It could completely change your life." And I was I had a girlfriend at the time in high school, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna miss these times." So I missed prom 2 years in a row, the last 2 years. So I never went to prom, but I ended up getting a scholarship after playing really well in AAU after my senior year. And it was so worth it to end up getting a scholarship to Long Beach State.
Yeah. Before we move on, what was the school that you really wanted to go to? Was it Oregon or Oregon State? Where I want to play here, and then when they didn't kind of give you the offer, was it okay, I want to make sure I'm playing them and beat them at any point, or?
Yeah, definitely. So my dream schools were North Carolina, UConn, and Arizona. Those were my 3 schools that because I used to watch those North Carolina teams, Vince Carter, Jordan, North Carolina, and you got Rudy Gay and Jordan Dyson, those guys at UConn, and then you see Chase Budinger and Salim Stoudemire, these University of Arizona legends, and so I really I wanted to go to one of those schools. I was like, okay. And then University of Oregon, they had Luke Jackson and Luke Rittenauer and Freddie Jones and all those guys in Oregon who were just amazing. They did really well there. And so just growing up in Oregon, that was obviously I'd love to go. And then I realized later, I didn't really know too much about the levels of NCAA, but finding out that those were the guys who usually went pro, I was like, oh, this is the level I want to go to. But then, yeah, once you don't get that scholarship, it's oh man, it's a whole new mind frame where I'm considering, okay, am I gonna have to go to JC? Am I gonna go NEIA? Because those were the main schools recruiting me at first. Yeah. And then you start to get some interest, after that AAU deal, I got a lot of interest from D1 schools, but it was so late that there wasn't many scholarships left. So that was a hard deal where it was not as much your choice, but more the options you had at that time, yeah. Right? And I didn't really know about prep school very well at that time, so that wasn't my biggest interest to take an extra year, to play in prep school. So I decided to take Long Beach State because I really enjoyed, the coaches and when I took my visit, it was a really good time seeing the pyramid, and Long Beach was so nice. So yeah, that was like a big influence on my decision. Was just excited about moving out of Oregon.
Yeah. Do you think that was the best basketball decision for you? Like looking back, I think obviously not to say that you particularly regretted it, but as we get more knowledge and even knowing about the prep school now, like, do you think that was the best basketball decision for you at the time?
I would say probably not. It was my top two schools were Portland State and Long Beach State.
Mm-hmm.
Portland State had a coach. His name was Ken Bone, and their point guard was a guy named Jeremiah Dominguez from my hometown, and he went to Portland State and did really well there, and they made the tournament 2 times in my first 2 years at Long Beach. And at Long Beach, we went 6-25 my first year, and then I got benched basically my second year. So I had 2 really tough first years, and then Portland State had killed it and went to the NCAA tournament, and then Coach Bone ended up moving to Washington State and coached Clay Thompson. So it's like, whoa, like this guy who was my top choice for the longest time, came to my high school and was really a really great coach, and showed a lot of interest in me. Ended up having so much success, and I was like, dang, like maybe I should have went to Portland State. I just really wanted to get out of Oregon because of the weather, and like the gym Portland State had was really small, and then you go to Long Beach State and they have a pyramid, and it's like this beautiful campus, and you're living that life. So yeah, I think in hindsight, prep school would have been great. Just thinking, especially what it is now, you see how many opportunities guys get.
Yeah.
Guys transfer nowadays. You see how they can make the most of their situation. I felt like, like I said, looking back, I didn't feel like Long Beach State utilized the talent I had, and I didn't get to be the full player I was. I was more of like a reserved shooter,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty limiting to what I could do. And then you think, okay, Portland State went to the tournament. I think going to the NCAA tournament could extremely change your career in terms of where you could go afterwards. And then, obviously when I graduated, there was the NBA lockout. So there's so many different factors and choices you make in the moment where you're like, dang, like, did this make this happen? Or what did the universe really want from me? Or, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, I think I had something to learn and grow with, and I learned to really follow my gut, regardless of what I really wanted to do. So sometimes you want something, but your gut is telling you to go another way. So I think I started to trust myself more in the future of like, standing up for what I felt was best for myself versus what I thought was the most enticing thing,
Yeah. So let's go back. You said you got benched. Was it because you had maybe a prolonged shooting slump, or they just decided to go with somebody else? And what did you take from that time to kind of bounce back and get more minutes moving forward for your last 2 years?
Yeah. D1 is a very, competitive landscape. So, each year these coaches are recruiting and looking to build teams to win as many games as possible, for so many different reasons, right? I ended up getting recruited over. Like I said, our first year we were 6-25, but weirdly we had lost about 12 games by 6 points or less. So, the team was capable, we had good talent, but we couldn't close out games. We had no guys on that team. We had no guys who had played Division I basketball the year previous. So either they were transfers, red shirts, or JUCO guys or freshmen. There was a mix of guys who all were high level guys, D1 talent, but hadn't played. So the experience and the chemistry as a team it was like putting a brand new team together essentially. So that was really tough. And then they recruited 4 freshmen who were really good. Casper Ware, who's the biggest name, big time overseas player. Drew League legend. His dad's one of the founders. And you got Larry Anderson, who's Long Beach native. You got TJ Robinson, who's a really high level prep school guy from Connecticut. And then we had Eugene Phelps, who's from Taft High School in LA, and he played with Larry Drew in high school. So you have and Larry Anderson had went to prep school also. So all these guys come from really high level background. They're local, and so I was fighting against that. Then we had a few transfers. Donovan Morris, who was like the best player on the team. Averaged like he averaged 27 points per game or 24 points per game. My freshman year, so he was the leader. Then we had a shooter come in who was a junior transfer. So I'm stacked behind all these guards who were coming in from prep school and transfers, and so I just got lost in the shuffle again. Another deal where it wasn't my skill level; it was more numbers game, and I usually get pinned to the last of that. And so that was really tough. It made me question my skill level. It made me question whether this was meant for me. It made me question, whether this was the right school, whether I should transfer. It was the hardest year of basketball up to that point of my life, and there was so much adversity, because the team wasn't great. We were average. We did 20 wins, but it was like a grind of a season. Like you have 4 freshmen coming in who are taking older guys' minutes. There's a lot of different cliques and things in terms of personalities, and for me, I was always like in the middle, kind of like operating with all different people, and it was a good experience at the end of the day where I'm like, okay, wow, not too many guys these days would face that amount of adversity and stay. I think the best basketball decision now, looking back, probably would have been to transfer, but there's something really golden for me, and really valuable about staying and sticking it out, because it made me want to prove myself even more and prove to the coaching staff. And I loved the coaching staff too, so that was a big reason why I stayed. It wasn't just like this horrible experience. I ended up getting the short end of the situation. So I wanted to stay. I loved the campus and everything, and then it also lit a fire in me to prove them wrong. And like, hey, dude, you guys recruited me, and I was a very high level player in high school, and I could do the same thing here. And I was just making sure I added weight, putting in all the hours in the off season, and really asking the coaches what they wanted to see, and developing my ball handling skills, and just always making sure that okay, if I'm not the guy who's gonna pass the eye test, I'm gonna make sure I'm the guy who works the hardest. I'm gonna be the most coachable. I'm gonna be able to communicate with all different players and learn how to do something that'll make me fit. Like, you're gonna have to play me because I'm gonna build a skill that you need. And that's where my 3-point shooting really kicked off, because he was like, hey, we know you can do more, but we're going to have Casper play the 1. Larry's going to be a point forward. And so the spot that's open is more like a 6-man role as a shooter. And I'm 6 feet tall. Playing shooting guard at Division I is not really heard of. You have a couple guys who can do that, but usually they're point guards, right? So I was like, okay, so then I'll have to be faster. My release is going to have to be quicker. I'm going to have to be able to shoot more difficult shots because you're going to get face guarded, and just put the hours in, man, to where I'm moving at a speed where I'm not fazed by the intensity of the game. I'm being able to make clutch shots and be a spark off the bench without being warm, without getting that first 10 minutes of game time. You come off the bench and it's like, all right, you got to produce right away. So there was a lot of obstacles there, a lot of tough situations you put in, because it's like you have a limited moment where you can capitalize on your situation, and if not, then you kind of you get lost in the shuffle. So I think for players listening, it's like, every situation is not going to be the best. You're not going to always be able to be the guy, but if you make sure that you're better than the next guy, they can't deny talent. They can't deny hard work. They can't deny an anomaly on the team, right? So the guy who can do this and I can only get this from here, like, they're gonna have to play it. And that's what I made sure I was that guy.
Yeah. How many conversations did you have with the coaching staff and over there, I guess, in between that second and third year, where you're kind of talking? Because I'm assuming, like, yeah, I'm gonna be the hardest working guy, but you're not just gonna go to the gym and just be the hardest working guy and then nobody's seeing that or nobody's there, and you're like, okay, I need to be a shooter, I need to work on release and things like that. Right. So how many conversations did you have with that staff to kind of really, I guess, one, build their trust that, okay, you need me to do this, I can go do that, and you go train for that, and now you're coming off and producing. And what was that process like, where you're kind of just, okay, like, I have to really, what did it take for you to get in that mindset where you're like, okay, like, this is the space I need to be in, and I need to really focus in on just specific details, because I have a 5 to 8 minute stretch here, and I have 5 to 8 minute stretch there.
Yeah, so, man, I can't tell you the amount of conversations I had about, first of all, like, my frustrations, places I thought I could fit, where they wanted me to fit, and then we watched a lot of film and the individual workouts you have and the team workouts you have in the periods when it's possible, because the Division One has like certain periods when you can work out with coaches and when you can't. So in the off season, we'd have open gym at Long Beach. So you're playing against pros, you're playing against guys from other colleges that might be in your league, or guys who are visiting. Guy plays D1 or this school from, he plays at DePaul, or he plays at, UConn or whatever. They're visiting back home. You're like, oh snaps, this is my time to show what I can do. So then you play with your teammates, and you start to build a trust, and they see you improving, right? And they see you in the workouts. You're making this amount of shots, and the coaches give you these goals, and they're like, hey, I want you to hit this goal. Like, if you can shatter that goal, you'll be ready, right? And so then I'm like, all right, I'm not just gonna shatter the goal. I'm gonna fucking kill that shit. Excuse my language. I'm gonna destroy the goal and make sure that they know I'm improving. Where your weight improves, how much you're lifting, like all your numbers improve, right? In the weight room, your times when it comes to like the mile run, the 100 meter, the 200 meter, all the conditioning we do, finish first. Like all these different situations I was put in, it's like I was excelling. We had the team decathlon, my team won, and it's like I'm on the reserve squad, so you have the reserve versus the starters. My team was beating them a lot of times. And so everybody like is seeing, they're like, okay, what's the common factor in these areas where the success is happening? I was tied to that. And I made sure that like I was doing the little things, whether it was hustling, whether it was, the IQ stuff, or the making sure I was locked in and focused to hit those big shots, when it counted. And at the end of the game, I was in. Even if I was a bench guy, somehow I was in that last 5 minutes of the game. And so I proved to the coaches like, okay, I can be mentally focused and be calm in these situations, right? I can help with strategy. I can communicate with my teammates and help them, succeed. And then, I know when to defer to other guys too. I know how to play my role. I think that's really important when it comes to basketball. A lot of guys everybody wants to be the star. It's easy to want that dream, but everybody can't be the star. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow because of the ego, because of the idea you had of yourself and the success you might have had in high school or at a different college or whatever it is, success you may have had, or even in open runs with, everywhere you go, you're the guy. But when you play at a high level or college, didn't have to be D1, but college, a lot of those guys were the guys. So it's melding those personalities and being able to understand how to succeed in the role you're given, and then expand as you get the opportunity. You know what I mean? Because like I said, everybody's not going to get the opportunity to be the guy, but if you can support the guy, or be the guy who plays defense, like whatever you got to do, you have to be able to do it. So I think that's super important, man. Just leaving your ego at the door and being very humble, but also keeping a chip on your shoulder to motivate yourself. So it's like a fine balance of all of those things,
Yeah. So you graduate from Long Beach, and I guess you're ready to go overseas and play, and the NBA lockout happens, and so now everybody that plays in the NBA is now playing overseas. What was that like, and did you have any encounters with some of the NBA guys where you're now in the league playing with them, or even more, I guess more so than just like maybe some pickup games that you had during the off seasons or anything like that?
Yeah. So at Long Beach, we had a good amount of scouts coming to our games. We had some NBA scouts come to our practices, when it was the periods when they could come and scout. And you start to see, guys getting recruited, and you're like, oh man, like this is, you draft board, you hear about all preseason All-Americans, and, you get that feel where, in college, you're thinking like, what's my next step? And then after college, when I graduated, there were, like you said, the lockout year. It was in 2011, and we had just played Washington State in the NIT because we lost to Santa Barbara for the second time, UC Santa Barbara for the second time in a row to go to the tournament. So that was like really hard deal when I felt like I knew that if we won the NCAA tournament, or we won the conference tournament to go to the NCAA tournament, I would have a really good shot to go pro. But then you lose, it's like you start to question it. So then once I'm like training in the off season, I'm looking to see about an agent. You have different people contacting you on Facebook and email, and you're like, who's who? I don't know you. It's this random person just saying, hey, I can get you a job overseas. And it's like this really hard situation to navigate as a 20, 21, 22-year-old kid. When you have all these people saying, hey, I'm going to help you make money and throw you in this country that you've never been to, right? So it's super scary. And then you got my year, the NBA lockout, where it's like, hey, the NBA might not happen. So those pro guys are going to possibly trickle down and take the jobs that you would have, and you might be left out. You know what I mean? So then you have to like stay patient, and you have to prepare for, I might be home this whole year, or like you know, it's a big waiting game, which is probably the most stressful part. Is just like, you know, continually working on your craft. You see this guy, the next person or whoever it is, they get a job overseas, and you're like, okay, I'm coming soon. I'm talking to this agent, and I'm like getting excited about it. 2 months goes by, 3 months goes by, nothing comes up, and you're just kind of sitting there like, oh man, like, what's gonna happen? You know?
Mm-hmm. So where did you decide to play, or when did that first offer come? And did you jump at the first offer, or did you maybe wait to see like, okay, like when the NBA comes back in, the NBA has a shortened season, a bunch of guys are now leaving, and teams, I guess, overseas are preparing for that, obviously, because when the NBA comes back, they're going to go back to the NBA, with that being the best league. So what was that process like once you get that first offer?
Yeah, so my first year, I essentially missed the first year. Like, I didn't get a job, but there was like a 2 month stint where I was in Benton Harbor, Michigan, playing for like a semi-pro team. And I ended up injuring my wrist there, so I barely got to play. So that season, and then I went on like a tour to China, so it was like a 2-week tour. So that 2011 to 2012 season, I was in Long Beach training a lot on my own, playing in open gym, just, you know, being really bored and kind of depressed because I felt like, holy smokes, like my career might be over right after I finished college. So that was pretty stressful. But then luckily I got a call from a coach named Mike Plank, who was working at Willamette, which is in Salem. It's a D3 level basketball team. And he called me and said, hey, there's one of our coaches, Josh Erickson. He's coaching in Costa Rica. One of their players got injured. Are you still looking to go overseas? And I was like, heck yeah, dude. Like, of course. You know, what's the situation? And they're like, well, this guy tore his ACL, and they need a player to come the beginning of June in 2012. Can you make it? And I was like, absolutely. So that was exciting to get a call randomly from a connection I had, and they knew I wanted to play. Shout out to Kip Ione, also all the Salem, Oregon folks who were looking out for me and, you know, wanted to give me an opportunity. That was my first offer to go play. It wasn't like it was big money. I was making $500 a month, which is like nothing you think about in the grand scheme of basketball money, right?
Yeah.
So my first pro deal was in Costa Rica, making $500 a month. But it was really good. I was so excited, and the weird deal right before that was I was preparing for my second tour in China, so I was going on a 2-week trip, play like a bunch of games against different national teams from different countries in China. So there was Latvia, there was the Netherlands, and then there was China. So their B team, and we played like 3 games, 1 game with each team in 3 different cities, and I actually built good friendships with those some of those players, which ended up getting me a pro team, which we'll come back to later, but ended up getting me one of my other pro jobs. But back to this. So yeah, after that China trip, I came home, and one day after I got home, I had to fly to Costa Rica. So imagine the jet lag I had being home, you know, coming from China, where it's like 13 hours ahead, coming back for one day, and then going to Costa Rica the next day, going for my first pro career. It was a huge adjustment. So yeah, that was the beginning of that. Super exciting, and that was how my pro career started.
Okay. And then so how was that season or that stint in Costa Rica? Did you kill it? Did you do? I mean, you did well enough to get a job and continue playing. So what was it like playing in Costa Rica? How was it different than, you know, playing in the States?
Costa Rica was so physical. Like, that was one of the toughest seasons I ever had. Like, I played, like, as a D1's physical, it's tough, but you have trainers, you have, you know, practice is different, like, you stretch and everything. It's just a whole different scene. The referees are different, you know, higher level, obviously, so they look out for you, for the players more, but being in a different country where you're, like, one of 2 or 3 Americans on the court, you are getting beat up. So that was a tough adjustment. And even like again back to my childhood days, I was tasked with being the best defender, guarding the best player, and then scoring and creating for the teammates. And I was getting really frustrated. So that was really hard getting adjusted to the style of basketball and having to do so much. And then playing on a team that the guy that I replaced was more of a local guy. So them getting used to a super intense young guy who's used to this like luxury D1 lifestyle where you have all these buses and all this, some kind of complaining and this and that. And so I had to humble myself and get adjusted to the way they're doing things and understand like, hey, dude, you're in this culture, you're in their place, and they're welcoming you. You're making $500 a month, dude. Like, chill, right? But anyways, we had a really successful year. We won a championship, so we won the season championship. I got MVP of the league, and then we won the national championship, which is like the two champions for the both halves of the season play each other in the finals. Mm-hmm. So even if it was a different team that won at the end, the first half team gets to play them at the end, right? So so we played and we ended up winning that game. And I went home, and like I said, so not to go too far ahead, but that was one of the best seasons of my life. Like that was probably the first time after Long Beach that I felt like I'm back. I felt like, okay, I'm back to GP where I'm, crossing and hitting threes and mixing and all the fancy stuff that I wanted to do. I had ultimate freedom from my coach to play how I wanted to and make mistakes how I needed to grow. And it was really, really, really instrumental to my development, not just as a player, but as a person. I got to get like excited about playing, where it's like, oh man, they're coming after you. Before it was like, they're coming after you, but like mainly it was like the other guys. I was a role player, and like some days it would be depending on the scouting report, right? But this one was every single game you had to be on your A game because they're gonna beat you up, they're gonna come at you, and the best players are gonna go, talk that trash. So it was like a rebirth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you didn't go back to Costa Rica. You looked like you moved on to Latvia. What was that decision? Did Costa Rica ask you to come back, or when their guy got healed from his injury, he was just taking his spot back? And what was that like?
So I didn't go back because I felt like the level wasn't where I wanted to grow to. I felt like I'm a mover and a shaker. So even if the level was good, I'm looking for the next deal. That's always been my mindset, is to always try and find the best challenge. So I felt like moving to Europe would be the best challenge. They did want me back, and I still have really good relationships with the team, my teammates and the owner and my coach and all that. Like I still go back and visit. I went a couple years ago. Facebook and all that, we keep in touch. So the love is always there, and I'll always hold a special place in my heart there. I mean, I met my current girlfriend in Costa Rica back then 7 years ago, and we built a friendship through basketball there. So she was in my coach's program, and we used to train together. And like we weren't dating after that, but that's where we met. And then a couple years later, we got back in touch and been together for almost 6 years. So there's like a lot of special memories, being able to win a championship for the first time for that team in like 35 years or something, and then be able to meet my partner, my life partner, and to be able to make those memories with those teammates and get a cool nickname. They call me the Wizard. That was dope. I felt like, okay, I got a little, nickname out here in Costa Rica they know me by. And the town that I was in was super small, San Ramon. It's about 40 minutes to an hour outside of San Jose. And there's a town that was so small, like really tight-knit community, and they had been losing to the team that was in near San Jose, who were the big dogs. They won like 6 straight championships. So again, taking those guys down who have the better team, they're getting paid really good money. The guys are getting, well, not really good money, but relative to the country, they're getting paid really good money compared to the other teams. And so we're the underdogs again, and I felt like, wow, in all these situations, I'm the underdog. We're trying to do something that hasn't been done in, 6 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever, all this different time, and break these boundaries. And I realized, like, oh, snaps, like, and then at Long Beach, I was the first recruit that Coach Munson, Dan Munson, brought over from to that school. So he transferred from University of Minnesota, moved to Long Beach State. I was the first 4-year guy. And so I was with the building of that program. So I realized like, wow, I don't think that I'll ever be the guy who gets there. I think I will be one day, but I think what's going to help me build my foundation of who I am, my identity, is being one of the founders or like one of the beginners of building something. And I think that I understand how to operate in a startup type situation. So whether it's a team or a company, I understand that grind and that sacrifice that you have to make to put this team or this company, whatever it is, in a situation to succeed later, beyond you. And like now I'm working for a tech company called Keep Truckin', where we're just hit our Series D funding, and they're in like the beginning stages of like really building a household name in the transportation industry. And I'm now with this company that's not like not an Uber, not like super established, but they're building, and I'm like, wow, how many times have I been able to get in a situation where I'm with a company or a team, where they're building and I'm a part of that. I just realized a pattern. So again, playing overseas and doing all of this helped me learn what it takes to sacrifice, how to understand where the golden opportunities are. So like what this moment really means, and not think that my success in the way that I defined it meant that I was actually successful or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think that basketball has kind of been a foundation for this next stage in your life, in terms of you seem to have found a correlation and you've seen this pattern? Do you think that your calling or what you will eventually be known for when it's all said and done will be in this post-basketball era, or do you want it to be for your basketball, and I guess if something comes up and you were able to continue playing basketball, is that be something that you would want and look forward to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's important to appreciate both. And my basketball career was up and down, and like I said, a lot of adversity, a lot of obstacles, a lot of questioning my purpose within it, why I was doing it, and proving yourself every step of the way, right? But then finding success underneath it all, and in hindsight looking back and being like, wow, I really pushed through that. I really made a mark for myself and did it in a respectable way, in a way that leaves a good taste in people's mouth, where they think of you, they think very highly of you. So I've been able to manifest and create long-lasting relationships where I can talk to people and they really understand the sacrifice you might have made, or you can share that good memory. And I feel like now, outside of my basketball or post-basketball career, I feel like my identity started with that, but then I've realized that I was using basketball for something bigger. I really feel a big value in connecting with people and learning about stories, and I realized how much I love art and being creative and expressive. And I think that my game, if someone who's seen me play, a lot of people phrase it as you look like you're dancing. You look like you're moving in a way that's flowing in a different way than a lot of people. And I learned that from guys I watched growing up. Larry Bird, Allen Iverson, Pistol Pete. There's a magic that they have to their games, and I try to add that to like communicate who I am through my game. And I think that going through some of the obstacles, you get frustrated looking back, like, man, I could have gone to the NBA, or I could have made this money overseas, or if I would have made this decision, maybe I wouldn't have been in this place where I got injured, or whatever it was. But I think all of it really means a lot to me because I've always stayed true to who I was. And I was like, okay, at least I know everywhere I went, I made sure that I was kind to people. I was open to other cultures and expanding my knowledge of what people around the world are, from Costa Rica to Dubai to China to Southeast Asia to Europe. You go to all these places and it's like, whoa, like I've made friendships in all those places. I still keep in touch with people in all those places. And they knew me from basketball. That's where maybe the connector may have started. But then they learned, and I learned about them so much more that we have to offer. So it's really cool. I feel like my next step is being a little more creative, but I think that the way that I've been able to view the world and use basketball as a tool to like build my confidence and use that as like a translator for different situations and the metaphors and everything. It helps me understand life, but it's not the way I define myself in life.
Gotcha. So again, like I think I mentioned, is that we met playing pickup basketball. So I think this is a good time to ask, what is your least favorite thing about playing pickup basketball? Like, from someone who comes and has played at the levels that you've played at, what is something that if you could take this out of pickup basketball, just a normal go pay pickup game, it would make basketball that you play so much better and more enjoyable?
Yeah. I think basketball has a lot of ties to humanity and how people operate. So I see basketball as a way to build interpersonal skills and communicate to people. And it says a lot about you. So, for example, like if I'm going to a pickup game, whether it's a rec league or just a random one down the street at the park, I really value selflessness. I really value teamwork. I really value competing, and being kind in the way, not just kind, but being constructive in the way you communicate. I think there's a big value in the way we communicate with each other. So, and then essentially you're building a relationship with people around you, and then you can find success through that galvanization, right? So when I go to play, I'm like, man, I wish people would keep it simple. Keep it simple. And I feel the same way about life, where it's like, don't do more than you can do at the moment, but do what you can do to the best of your abilities. Mm-hmm. And then lean on your teammates. So don't try and be the hero guy. Don't try and do something that's so difficult. Don't try and shoot the tough three. Kick it to your teammate. Trust, instill confidence in them that they're going to knock it down. And if someone makes a mistake, lift them up. Right? It's the same in life. If someone does something that's not the best, encourage them. Mm-hmm. Don't down them. Don't talk trash. It's easy to just say, hey man, do better. But it's a lot harder to find a way to strategize to help them improve where they need to improve, right? Mm-hmm. And be that supporter. So for me, it's like, man, if people could see basketball as a tool and keep it simple, make the extra pass, stay in your lane, basically, play how you can and like trust your teammates and encourage each other, like that stuff to me makes a big difference. I always enjoy basketball when the ball is moving fast and you get that layup on a fast break and people are kicking it ahead and guys are talking to each other, communicating, and like, hey, really encouraging each other. Like, it's all good. You got the next shot. You're good. And then also being open to learning. Like if I think as a person who people meet me and like they don't know my background and then they kind of learn and see me playing, like learn from others, man. Like if you see me making that nice pass or not driving when people are stuffed in the key and then turning the ball over, like learn from other people. So that's how I became a better player, was learning from the guys who I saw were having success. So I see people are gravitating towards those guys saying, hey, nice pass, good shot. I'm like, oh, what is that person doing to find success? All right, I'm going to mimic that. Mm-hmm. And so then life becomes easier because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can learn and see what other people are doing. And I think that's why I'm saying it's an analogy for life. Like, I don't have to create the next Google. It's like, no, I can figure out a way to innovate what I'm doing in a similar way that someone else has done, or learn from someone else's journey to then help my own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves. I don't like to dribble, like get picked up full court, and somebody's just running by themselves. I'm like, I don't want to work that hard. I'll just let you deal with that. So I guess to close this out, what would you like to be known for or known as outside of basketball? And when you tell people about your basketball experience, do you think that creates a barrier in any way where people maybe say, oh, okay, this is like, maybe put you in a box like, oh, this is an athlete, he's just a basketball player? Or do you think it maybe opens doors because maybe there's a mutual respect or a mutual interest there, or even a mutual person that they know through basketball that's allowed you to do things outside of that?
That's an excellent question. I feel like I would love to be known for my like breaking boundaries. Like that's something that I feel like is a huge cornerstone of who I am, is stepping outside of the box, not letting someone else's idea of who I am or what they think I should be doing or an athlete should be doing, or whatever societal conformist ideology they have, I really don't worry about that too much. I actually like to attack limitations that people put on me. So if you say, hey, you know, you're an athlete, you shouldn't be an artist. It's like, all right, I'm gonna learn art. I engineers and athletes, there's nothing in common. Art. I'm gonna find the commonality. So I want to really be known for being a rebel, and then also building community. I think there's something really important about a guy who's come from a small town like Salem, Oregon, to travel the world, to earn a scholarship to get to college, to overcome a lot of adversity and hardships when it comes, from losing my father at a young age, losing other people in my life, and not having everything given to me, just being able to overcome those obstacles and do it with a smile on my face, and then accept the times when I didn't. Like, I don't try to run from the melancholy or the vulnerability. Like, I embrace that. So I want to make sure that I'm known for being true to who I am and being positive in amidst hardship, in the face of negativity or adversity. Like, I always try to just make sure I'm rolling with excellence. So that's definitely something I want to be known for. And then what's the other part of the question?
Do you think that there's any barriers that you want to break or that come up from when you tell people your past, or do you think that it maybe opens doors?
Right. So that is another thing. Is like, I want people to see me, and then initially, a lot of times they assume, okay, they might put a label on it where it's like, okay, black guy or athlete, or they don't know my basketball background, so then I'm a tech guy because I'm working in tech. It's like all these different things people try to relate to you. It's not a negative; they just try to understand you. But it's like, I think the basketball deal helps people understand a little bit about me. They get excited about that because it's basketball. But then when they meet me, they see like, oh snap, this guy isn't even talking about sports. He's talking about Keith Haring, or he's talking about Michelle Alexander and the new Jim Crow. Or he's talking about activism. He's talking about toxic masculinity and talking about how other things that design and art. Like, I really feel like there's so many other things that are exciting about life that a lot of people that I've spoken to around the world talk about. And I've realized that people aren't one-dimensional. Like, people are multifaceted, and people have so many layers to who they are and interests and passions that if we can find a connecting piece, that's great. I use basketball as a connecting piece, or I use experiences I've had as a connecting piece, but then I show them more of who I am. And so my big goal is to build, I'm building a brand called the Intellectual Athlete, where it's like, I like to say I'm merging the boundaries of the intellectual, the artist, and the athlete, where it's like you have the competitiveness, you have the creativeness, you have the contemplating, and the eagerness to learn, the curiosity. That's a lot of the individual. It's not like one person is that, So I think the more we can put those in the same room and make who people are undefinable, the less the people who are limiting or labeling others will understand how to determine it. So then they'll just have to roll with it and let it rock.
Got you. Well, I want to respect your time, so I want to thank you for joining on and supporting the homie, as your sweatshirt says. Where can people find you on social media, your website, if you want to go ahead and plug anything so they can look you up a little bit more?
Yep. So my website have 2 domains, so you can go to theintellectualathlete.com or gregoryplater.com, 1 T for Plater. And my Instagram is at Greg Plater, pretty simple. And my Twitter is hoop_nerd. And my email, all my social media usually has a contact point, so I would love to reach out to people who would love to talk about travel, talk about fashion, talk about art, talk about sports. Like, I'm interested and curious to learn about the story of other people, so I feel like there's so many stories and things and adventures that people have to offer. Like, I just want to learn about people. I think there's so much beauty in what people have to offer.
Nice. All right. Well, I will put links for all of those in the bio. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. This is a little bit of a longer episode, but a lot of great material, a lot of very interesting things that Greg was talking about, and I couldn't cut them any shorter. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. Thanks.